welcome, Lynn Smith. My name is Mike, and my co-host Alex, who you can see on the screen. Great to reference the screen in an audio medium.
Yeah.
But the first thing we like to ask all of our guests is, what was your start in comics? As a reader, as a writer, however you want to go about explaining that.
Yeah, so I'm always a little embarrassed because I didn't have a whole lot of exposure to comics growing up. I was an animation freak. Like, I loved just animated anything. So the only exposure to comics I got was the little Disney magazines that you got in the grocery aisle.
Sure.
What is it? Disney Adventure or something
Disney Adventures,
like that?
yeah.
Yes. So, which makes me so mad because I had boxes upon boxes of those and my mom just threw them away. Ooh, mother. But anyway, but yeah, so I grew up with those, but for the most part, yeah, I spent most of my childhood in front of a TV in a circle of all my markers and papers and just was pausing all my animated movies or television series and just drawing out scenes. I really wanted to be an animator, and that's what I went to school for. I wanted to be a storyboard artist or a character designer, something in the animation field where I didn't have to animate for my entire life for just 3 seconds of animation. Because I was an artist, but I didn't have the patience for that.
Yeah. So, there's an artist, and then there's it. Some people, I'm sure, are artists and do that really well, but it feels like scut work to have to be okay, I drew this character once, and now I'm going to spend the next 3 years drawing this character again.
I mean, one of my good friends from high school went to college for computer art animation, and he started off, working, as part of a studio and working on one character or whatnot. He interned doing work at a video game, for EA,
nice.
and to the point where, but it was it was the same thing over and over and over again, working in animation. And to the point where
he's Amish now, right? He just left it all behind.
well, no, he still loves animation, but now he writes and directs his own stuff, and has worked out of it. But there was a part of he loved animation, he loved doing it, he loved the medium, the finished product. But there was a time, I think, for him, it was I'm working on the same scene, all I'm doing is working on this, whether it's hand drawn. In his case, it was computer. Just it's the same set of frames over and over and over again, and it's iterative, and it's just he felt where was the art in this now? Mm-hmm. And I think he felt lost a little bit in that, just being kind of a the
assembly line.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So was visual art always something there? You said you're sitting there with your markers and crayons or whatnot. So was drawing and everything?
Yeah.
Was that something that was pretty hardwired in you from the start?
Yeah, I mean, that and writing. I didn't know which direction I wanted to go. But yes, my family, I don't have anybody else in my family that was creative, only in the sense of my sister was great at interior design and she was, creative in that aspect. But for me, I was the only one that was drawing. So they're always oh yeah, just give it to Kaylin. She'll draw for you or whatever. I was the one they turned to for art. And so yeah, my family was so supportive. My parents always knew I was going to go into something creative wise. And I went for animation, and I grew up on Don Bluth and animated, Disney.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be a Disney animator, and I'm so glad that ship has sailed because, but also that was my goal. And but graduating from college, there was so many options to be an animator. There wasn't. So I just started doing a webcomic, and I started posting it online for free, just kind of keep myself busy and build the portfolio. And it got popular. And then suddenly people were giving me money for something I was posting for free. And here I am. I'm creating my own worlds and my own characters, and I'm utilizing that writing aspect as well. And I just found the perfect medium that just encompassed everything that I was passionate about.
What was that like then I have to imagine there's some, was there an anticipation as you started off in webcomic? Was it just about getting yourself reps and I'm going to do this to make myself do it, to get experience? Or did you have an idea of well, really, if I do this, then maybe it might lead to, to other opportunities to stay in cartooning? Like, was that a goal at the beginning, or did it become a goal as you got further down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in the back of my mind a little bit, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get famous this way. Maybe. But I also was just like, yeah, if I had a built-in audience, I'm a people pleaser. So I don't want to like disappoint. If I get an audience, I don't want to disappoint them. So that'll force me to keep on posting. And gosh, it's no longer a site, but it was Smack Jeeves, which was I guess the original web comic platform.
That name sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. They just pulled the plug on it. Gosh, a couple years ago. So RIP Smack Jeeves. But that's where I got my start. So I started, reading on there, and I was like seeing what everyone else was doing. And it was so interesting to me that, people were just doing this on their own, with no help whatsoever. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try it out. And it just started growing more and more. And Plume. And then I moved Plume over to Plume was the Smack Jeeves series. Obviously, this is what we're talking about. But yeah, Plume moved over to its own website, and it grew and grew from there. So
publishing on Smack. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I just wanted to say to the viewers, I got to see a beautiful little cat on screen. So neener.
Very confused. She thinks it's dinner time. Which, by the way, yes. I intend to ask you because I just saw on your Instagram, whichever con you did last, Dragon Con,
yeah. That's why my voice is a little rough because 4 days of just like yelling over the crowd. It was
it's we're in con season.
Oh yeah.
Well, I saw that you did some private commissions of cat drawings, and I was like, oh my. I was showing them to my wife. I was like, we might need to get one of these commissions.
Yes, bring it on. I love it.
She was like,
you need to remind you, Mike. You can't do all of them. You got to choose.
I actually thought one. I might be able to get, if I could get a picture with all three of them in one, I might be able to get all three cats. About a year ago.
For the record, I've been to your house. We recorded at your house. I've never seen all your cats in the same room at the same time before.
No, they aren't.
I don't think that's possible.
I think if I pulled out like a slab of raw salmon, I might be able to get all three of them in the room at the same time.
That's true for all of us. I mean,
that's true.
That's true. I'd come over for that. Let's be honest.
My 1-year-old just started pounding smoked salmon the other day, and I was like, wow, she does have Danish blood in her.
So proud.
I was very proud, except I gave her a little bit to try, and then she was taking it off of my plate. And I had to eat chicken nuggets, which is really a decent consolation prize.
Yeah.
But I saw these commissions, which we're going to ask about commissions and such at the end. But I loved your cat drawings, and we're crazy cat people, and Alex not so much, but
wildly allergic to most household pet animals, dogs and cats.
Which is probably why we stopped recording here, because last time I think my cat Fitz was showing a great interest in your vitamin water.
Anytime we recorded in person, it was like I had to load up on Claritin before I got there. Otherwise, about halfway through, just everything would basically it would shut down. Couldn't breathe through my nose. It was. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
So anyway, we interviewed the colorist Hillary Jenkins about a year ago, and I commissioned a piece for her, and she did this hawk drawing in watercolor that my daughter looks at every day and does a hawk sound every time she sees it. And I was like, and she thinks she can do a cat's meow. So I do think, as a great love for my daughter, it's not a selfish gift if I commission a cat drawing for my daughter.
There you go. Yeah.
If I just keep saying that to myself again and again and again,
right.
By the time we see you at our local comic expo, I'll probably have worked myself into.
That's right, Mike. It's every comic you buy, all those great in slab books, all that's an investment in her future someday.
Exactly.
Right? Every piece of art you buy,
all the guitars and everything,
all of that is for.
Yeah, it's all about A+ parenting. You're doing just phenomenal job.
You're doing great, Mike. You're doing great, buddy.
Well, we may have covered this already, but once you started getting into comics by producing them, did you start reading other people's work, or was it all Smack Jeeves? People, who are some of your major influences? If people are really into your work, who else should we check out?
So Tracy J. Butler, she does a series, Lackadaisy Cats, and she's actually working on an animated series of it now. But I remember discovering her quite a bit, like quite early in the game for me. and it is phenomenal work. It's just, the speakeasy times, 1920s with cats, and it's just like as a mafia of cats. It's just amazing. It's just
I
really fun.
absolutely love this art.
Is
Yes.
so you looked it up? I'm assuming like anthropomorphized cats, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
is it kind of like? Have you
And
read Black
sepia
Sad?
toned over
Black
them.
sad.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
it's very
Oh,
black sad.
well, then
Mhm.
I'm in, because Black Sad is one of my, all time favorite books.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her character design. Wow. Yeah, I have so many ways that I spend money poorly.
Yeah.
I would also kickstart a
You
game
can see
based
them in
on
the
this
background
art.
of his window there.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are all of them.
I would
him.
also kickstart a board game that used these characters and this artwork because it's
Oh
awesome.
yeah. Yeah, and keep an eye on her because there's an animated series coming hopefully
fantastic.
soon. So yeah. Yeah.
All right, it's on our radar.
Yeah. So
Well-
are there any other artists that you looked at? I mean, you mentioned Don Bluth, and obviously the animation from that era. You mentioned Disney. I think, and I mentioned this when Mike and I talked about Plume, and I said I would ask you when we talked to you. Seeing some of your character design, I think some of your face design, like I see a Disney-esque version in how you draw a little, and I didn't know if that was going to be a yay for you or negative for you, or do you see that? Is that something that came from you simply because of how you were raised and where you started in your mind?
Well, yeah, definitely drawing Disney characters over and over and over and over again, growing up. Certainly, yeah, it's certainly ingrained in my, muscle of my hand. But there's like a number of influences too. Like, obviously the anime, I know anime is derivative from Disney, but like, I feel like that kind of morphed in there too. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite series as well.
Sure.
So there's some influence there. But yeah, it's kind of just a combination of all these things I just kind of collected as I grew. But yeah, Don Bluth, definitely a huge inspiration as far as story goes, because, he takes some adorable characters and just plops them into this really dark story. And so I guess Disney kind of touches on that, but I think, Don Bluth definitely, his films definitely like got more dark and
without
gritty.
Question. Yeah.
So I always loved his films way more than my Disney films, but so there's just a combination of a lot of things just kind of piled in.
Yeah. Well, let's transition to talk about Plume. Now, how often do you revisit Plume? I guess you sign a lot of Plume stuff at these cons.
Yeah.
Have you reread it since it came out?
Actually, so one, I'll say at Dragon Con, I had so many people, like more than any show, came up and like, oh my God, I forgot about this series. I love this series. So it was really great to like revisit it through the fan eyes like that. But I'm actually writing out a Plume novel right now. So like long form novel of
adaptation of what was done, or
yes, but I'm expanding more on the story, like going further into storylines that I wanted to go into. So yes, I've been rereading it and I'm also like, why did I do that? Being all critical.
I was like, are you hypercritical of your work when you go back to it, whether it's Plume or any of your earlier webcomic stuff?
Yeah, it bounces back and forth. Like there are times where I'm like, oh God, like obviously we expand, we develop as creators. You look back at your old stuff because Plume was created over 10 years ago was the first time I started posting it.
When was the first when did the first page go up?
2011
maybe?
2011, I think.
Oh, wow.
I believe it was 2011.
Yeah.
So seeing the first couple pages and then, seeing my art develop over that, it's like some of these pages I'm like, gah, like it makes me like physically cringe. But I mean, as far as overall story though, like Plume is just, it's got a special place in my heart. I have a tattoo of Vesper right here. It's just, it's my roots. It's the whole reason why I'm in this career. So yeah, it's my baby. I'm very proud of it, but I also have that, full-bodied cringe every time.
Sure. I think
some of it, but
to some extent that's normal. I can tell. I bought the hardcover omnibus from you last time you were at our con, and I was dangling it in front of people on the podcast, which hasn't come out yet, but there are these one shots in the back where clearly you had more story to tell, because the whole time we were opining about like what was Korik's life like, this 600 years. And then you get like this little glimpse of it in the one shot, and it's like, oh, it's there. Like she's got it written in her head canon. It's just how much do we have to pay you to get it out of there on the paper? So
yeah. It's been fun to do the novel, because exploring that, like exploring more of the inner dialogue of these characters, and Korik's background, like what he actually went through. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well, so I have to ask, not that there's certainly no right answer, but why did you choose Western as a genre? It's not one that we see a lot in this day and age. We were kind of talking about, I think certainly my dad was really big into Westerns. He grew up in the 60s and 70s, which was like Westerns were the MCU back then. It was just like total saturation in the movie theater. And so to me, there's like a nostalgia to Westerns. But in my lifetime, there have been maybe 5 great Westerns made. So it's one of those genres that isn't like the first thing people necessarily reach for. But you found it to be a really good place to sit down and tell a story.
Yeah. So again, my dad as well was like fully into Westerns. And so, I'd always watch it with him, and, my mom too, she really enjoyed the genre. But I did move away from it until Red Dead Redemption came out. I am a hardcore gamer. I love Red Dead Redemption. And
maybe one pop culture thing from the Western genre that you and I didn't mention. We talked about there's not revivals, but there are always ways that Westerns come back in now in popular culture. Yeah, but obviously Red Dead. Now that you say it, it's like. You've said it to the point now that I'm thinking we should go back and edit our episodes before they come out.
Yeah, we'll
so
slide
that we
it in.
can talk about that, because that's so obvious now as to a reason why it would have come back in. So, well, that's fantastic. That something like Red Dead brought you back into it.
I'm also a huge gamer, but I'm a PC gamer, and it became very hard to watch all my friends playing Red Dead, and they just would not port it over to PC. I finally got Red Dead 2. It like a decade after everyone was done talking about it. Yeah. And I was like, I want to talk about it now.
I want to talk about it now. Yeah. Well, you can talk about it, because I love that game. That is definitely my top. I would say Last of Us, and then Red Dead Redemption, like very close by, underneath Last of Us. But I spent a ridiculous amount of time playing Red Dead and Red Dead 2. And so I just fell in love with the genre, and I just knew I need to plop these characters into that Old West feel. So that was it.
So, okay. So you got a little nostalgia for them, but you're not like sitting down every weekend and rewatching Clint Eastwood movies or something.
I mean, I love the remake of True Grit. I loved
so good
with Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, Haley Steinfeld.
It was so good. 3:10 to Yuma, I really liked.
The new one, the Christian Bale one.
The new one, the new one. I'm forgetting one. I'm going to be really mad at myself.
Seven, I think.
Yes. And I swear there's a new one coming out that I was really excited about. No, I can't remember.
Well, there's also Cowboys versus Aliens, which is a little different.
Yeah. But it is a genre. I think we mentioned, we didn't mention Red Dead, but there's a genre that it gets touched on. The one thing I thought when I first read Plume, one of the first thing that came to me was Firefly, which obviously was a space Western. You think of something about like Westworld, which obviously has the Western feel, but it's still a current day thing. The Mandalorian is effectively a Western, albeit set in Star Wars. And so there are themes and tropes and character archetypes that persist across the Western. Now, having someone like yourself who had watched these movies growing up and had played a game like Red Dead, where did in your mind, did you have some of those tropes and archetypes? Like, I need to put this in here, and then either like play with it a little bit and put a little spin on it, or put my spin on it that may be against what the reader, the audience might be expecting?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's kind of my selfish way of like, okay, this is what I want to see, and so I'm just going to write what I want to see. And so yeah, it was just kind of like a cauldron, just throw in everything and just mix it up. But I always joke that, my type is a cursed man, because I have another series that there's a cursed man, and then the current series I'm working on is another cursed man. So I'm like, okay, I have a type. I like my men like I like my houses, tall and cursed. But yes, it's been, yeah, it's just whatever I want to see. A strong female lead was really important to me, where she's not busting out of her top, or having like, I love that we're having representation throughout all movies and TV and comics of like strong female leads, but she doesn't have to be a womanizer herself. Like, can she just be a strong female lead,
Right.
And so yeah, so it was really important to me to see that. And then the building of the relationship between Korik and Vesper, the two leads, like, he's, they both love each other clearly, but he's kind of forced to be in the situation. So just kind of how that relationship works, because it's rocky for sure. And she's flawed because she's selfish and she has a lot to prove, and she's dragging him along to this quest of revenge for the West. So I just love relationships that are just like, they're not perfect. You got to kind of like work your way through and finally grow together and land somewhere where you can agree and be, live in harmony or something. So yeah, just everything I wanted to see, just threw it in there.
Yeah,
I
to
do
me,
sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, to me,
man.
it felt like it fixed a lot of the problems with the tropes that, like, so we referenced, like, one thing was like Indiana Jones, and that's really just because there were like magical relics in what would otherwise be a pretty grounded reality. But in those movies, it's all about Indiana, and the sidekicks are a little too sidekicky sometimes. It's like Aladdin, but he has the genie in the bottle. Firefly, Mandalorian, True Grit. I think we did even reference Last of Us, where it's like the older man and the younger woman, and he's the protector, or like Leon, the professional. Look, we just started rattling off. It will take people 100 hours to catch up on all the pop culture we reference while discussing this. Yet, you're able to like kind of nod at each one of those, and you've got this person with, the big Disney princess eyes when you look at her. Yeah. And so you expect a certain thing, but then you find out, oh no, she's actually going to be the one trying to be the protector of Korik by the end of the story. And that's a significant twist. And then, we're assuming people have read the book if they're listening to this interview. I really did not see it coming that both of them die at the end. I mean, it's not, I mean, they're not like dead, like we never hear from them again. In fact, you set yourself up for infinite future storytelling now that they're essentially immortal.
Immortal beatings, yeah.
But I was hoping the one trope you would fall to is the Dom. I was like, can we give him the Jafar treatment and lock him in the book? And that was what I was cheering for at the end. When it was clear that someone had to go in the book, I was like, that guy's just the worst. And it was nice to see that we didn't have to have the redemptive arc for every character, because I think it a little Disneyifies everything when every character reaches the best version of themselves, because that's just not how life is.
Yeah.
But it was great to see that character growth from Vesper, and really it's impressive to see a 600-year-old character learn new things and grow. You would think he had learned all the lessons he had to learn. So all those kind of references in there. And, my only question was like, how'd you pull it off? Other than you just kept telling the story chapter by chapter.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, it was, knowing the story I wanted to tell, and with it being a webcomic, it was very interesting, because, I'm posting, I think it was 3 pages a week. And I was getting immediate response from people, the comments. Just seeing how people were reacting to each of these pages was really fascinating to me. And it shaped the story a little bit. I was like, okay, they like Tegan quite a bit, so let's bring her in a little bit longer, and then I'll kill her. And then it's like, okay, I'll get her, I'll get them more attached to her. So it was interesting, And then, the comments too, they were starting to theorize like how it's going to end. And so I did have a different ending in mind, but watching everyone like, oh, this is what's going to happen. And I was like, okay, you think that's what's going to happen?
I
This
love
is
it.
what's going to happen.
I was going to ask about that specifically, the idea that, like, because it's the webcomic, it's, I don't know if you had an ending in mind, or if you script out multiple pages like you would a traditional print comic, or if it's kind of, you're thinking in smaller segments, but getting that feedback. I was going to ask if that had any positive or negative impact on the story of people thinking they might have figured it out. Because I will say, as I talked to Mike about it, once Korik loses, he loses the power, and he's immediately like, I got to get it back, and he finds the ring. Like, I was certain that it was going to end with him staying mortal and Vesper going into the ring and being the protector. Like, that seemed like, oh, not that I'm smarter than the author, but it's like, oh, I can see where this is going. It's so very clear. But the one thing I wouldn't have gotten, because the other option would have been everyone's free of everything, and the spell is broken. Yeah. The idea of both of them going into the ring together and being protectors for all eternity, as it were, like that was the one option that I wouldn't have been like, that would have been in the 5% of other, like, undefined possibilities. And yet, so as I'm reading it and I'm thinking I'm so clever, and I get to the end of like, oh no, wait, I guess I was reading a different story, and this is the one it was supposed to be. And obviously it makes sense. It doesn't come out of the blue, but there was a pleasant surprise on my end, because it seemed like it was going in a certain way, and I thought it was building towards that, and I thought I knew. And then when I get the story as it actually is, it's very compelling, and I think it draws me in to kind of reconsider some of the story, because like, oh, this is how it ends now. This is what it's supposed to be, not the way that it was working in my head. I'm just the reader here. I'm not the author. So is that the kind of thing you were seeing as these posts, as these pages were going up from commenters of people doing the same thing that I was doing?
Oh, like, absolutely.
Working their way to the end and thinking they had it figured out.
Well, yeah. And it was pretty early on too. They were like, oh, what if Korik gets free and, Vesper's the protector. And I was like, okay, we're going to go in that direction. So I continued to do that direction. And then at the very, I just switched it. I'm like, so I definitely, in the very, very, very beginning, when I wrote out the whole synopsis, and then like normally I would tackle chapter by chapter, I would script it out, and then I would draw it. So I didn't change it within the chapter as, the comments were coming in.
You would do the whole chapter at once, like in your mind. Okay. So in that way, it was more similar to traditional print comic of like, this is an issue, doing the whole thing, and that is what it is from there.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And so the initial plan for me was I was gonna have Vesper as the protector, and then I was gonna kill off Korik. He was gonna be Gonzo. So that's
a different comic. That's a different story.
That would have made me really sad. I was already sad about the death of Tegan. I was sad that we didn't get to enjoy Dom's death more.
I know, yes. I want to stretch that out a little more in the novel.
just a really painful. But there's this moment at the end where he shoots her in the back, and he's having this vision from the book, and you see the little kid Dom there, and you made me feel empathy for him that I didn't want to feel, which I think is quite the feat. And you realize like, oh yeah, he's chasing revenge, she's chasing revenge. It really levels the playing field if that's all she's about. However, at the beginning of book 3, I think she says this isn't about revenge anymore, it's a rescue mission. And she's kind of gone from the late era Westerns, because Alex and I were talking about this. I don't know my Westerns well enough to know when the pivot was, but it used to be old Westerns. There was one unimpeachable, really good guy, and then they made that anti-hero twist, probably in the 70s, where it was always the conflicted,
there was the literal white hat and the literal black hat.
Yeah.
And then that starts, maybe it was changing around I think maybe I thought around the Sergio Leone, the spaghetti westerns, the Clint Eastwoods, where he's a little more the anti-hero, the little more ambiguous character, the character that now I think we think of when we think of the Old West and we think of the cowboys. We don't think of it as the so basic black and white now. We think of all of that era now as, well, you know, it's lawless out there, and there are people with good intention and bad intentions. They may not be good people or bad people. It's a little more ambiguous. And so, yeah, I don't know when that shift was, but I think that's just become the
interesting thing is that Vesper moves in the opposite direction. You know, she kind of starts as that conflicted, willing to kill people, out for revenge, and her motives become more altruistic as she moves on. Mm-hmm. And she starts to let go of revenge and pursue something, you know, a little bigger, a little more noble. So again, I thought that was a subversion, because I think a lot of times we think, oh boy, we're going to see this really Breaking Bad style character who goes down the wrong road for possibly a good reason, and then just, you know, becomes really, really bad. But that was just another subversive twist. So I love that you didn't have like a rigid 17 issue arc in your head that you stayed committed to regardless of comments. And I also love that upon reading the comments, you were like, well, now I know what they're thinking, and I'm really going to stick it to them. Yeah. I can't think of anything more artistic than that.
No. I mean, we're playing God. We can at least, you know, pull some strings, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So the art, by the way, is what drew me into the book. I knew nothing about it. I just loved the art that I saw. And I bought the hardcover edition, which I do want to ask you about. I'll go ahead and insert that question here. What was it like working with Devil's Due, who ended up publishing the final edition? I've never held a comic like it. The quality of the paper, I think it's a stitched binding. Like, it lays flat anywhere I'm holding it. You got a really, really nice hardcover out of this.
I did. It's my pride and joy. And sadly, it's all sold out. So I need to do a reprint here very, very soon. But yeah, Devil's Due was great. It was so, because I was new to the game. So it was so good to like have, you know, this publisher take me by the hand and kind of show me the ropes a little bit. I mean, but they were pretty hands off, which was another thing. They said, you know, because that was one stipulation. I'm like, I want to own my stuff and I want full control. And they're like, yeah, that's it. So they slapped their logo on the book and that was it. So that was exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, I did notice it's not listed on their site anymore either. So
no,
they're just totally out.
Is that because it's sold out?
It's sold out. And then, you know, our contract is wrapped and all that. So the next print will be purely under my name, which is great. And I loved working with them, but also I'm like, cool, I get to have it, you know, completely to myself again. So, but it was an amazing experience. And that book turned out amazing. I wish I recorded my reaction when I first popped that box open. But yeah, it's my pride and joy. Yep. And it was a pain in the butt. It fit only 10 books to a box that was like, you know, 50 pounds plus. So,
it's heavy. Yeah. I mean, it's heavy. You use a heavy paper. It's heavy and it's glossy, but it's not like reflective glossy. Like, you picked the right paper. And I didn't know how much say you had in all of that. It sounds like
I was going to say, is that all coming from you? Because I know when you talk to, you know, the creators who work at Image, they talk about you know, or any creator own thing, you get to choose what your cover paper looks like, what the interior pages and all. You get all of that control over as much or as little as you want in terms of what your book is. So like, how granular were you on this book here and this printing, this hardcover, in terms of paper stock and everything like that?
Yes, paper stock, not so much, but the cover was definitely like, I knew I wanted gold foiling and like matte finish with the gloss not embezzling. Wow.
Embossed.
Jeez.
Yeah, embezzling is a whole different thing. That's
a different podcast.
Next episode.
Next episode. Embezzling,
that's in the Plume sequel.
Smith. But yes, so I knew that, you know, the kind of look that I wanted. So yeah, they were great in that. But yeah, as far as the interior, I'm like, that's all them. So yeah. So while the art and the production and everything drew me in, that's only half of it for me. The writing drew me in immediately too, and that's something I didn't know until after I bought it at full price and got it signed, and I was like, gee, I hope it's good.
You're pot committed now.
Yeah, it's not a cheap book.
Yeah.
I don't remember it being particularly expensive. And as I recall, you signed it for free.
Oh yeah.
Which to me, it was like, well, if I paid $10 less for the book and then $10 for the signature, it all washes out. But when I read the writing, the dialogue is quick and punchy, and there aren't long caption boxes. Aside from, well, there are no long narration boxes, but the very first few pages kind of have, it's an inner monologue, but it's a narration box. And so I was wondering, like, is this a convention of web-based comics? Are you assuming people are reading on their phone, their tablet, and aren't going to sit and camp out on a page for a few minutes? Or is this your style regardless of medium?
So, from my roots of wanting to be a storyboard artist, I wanted to show more than I told. So I knew that, if I could say it in an expression, I'm going to say it in an expression. Like the Tegan death scene, I don't say anything for like, several pages. And it was so fun to me just to kind of, give the lettering a rest and just let the art speak. As far as the voiceover goes, that is one thing. When I revisited the story recently, I was like, why didn't I continue on with the voiceover? I just kind of did it in the beginning and then the end.
But yeah,
there's no inner monologue. Nobody. Yeah.
It was just a way to set up the story. All the web comics that I was reading at the time, they did a lot of voiceover. And it was, because, as a web comic, you want to post as quickly as possible. And so, doing a voiceover, you can quickly explain what's happening. And I just found I didn't need that. I made sure to bring it in at the end to kind of, wrap it up.
Put a button on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So to make it look like it was intentional, but I didn't need the voiceover.
I mean, I think, but there's a lot of movies that do that too. They'll have a voiceover at the beginning and then they drop you in the story. And once you're in the story, you don't need the voiceover anymore because you're in real time.
Yeah.
And it's a little ambiguous even where those opening 3 pages were in the timeline of events. Because then it jumps back to the beginning and then you're just with her experiencing it all in real time. So I thought it totally worked. Didn't seem like an accident or an oversight.
Okay. Good.
Hearing you say talk about your background, your past working on storyboard, and the idea you want to show more than you can tell. I will say one thing that I mentioned in Mike and I's discussion that I loved about your book was your use of essentially the reaction panel, the reaction shot, or the no dialogue shot, where maybe 2 characters are speaking and then you get that blank spot there for a reaction, which often used for comedic effect or anything like that timing there. But I love the way that you had done that throughout, whether it's a matter of only thing that different is the way someone's eyes look or the expression on their face, maybe goes from a smile to a frown or something like that, and just gives you that pause throughout the action or the dialogue. And I guess that makes sense coming from your background there, talking about storyboards of how do we get from point A to point B. And it's not just one continuous shot, there are different cuts, different looks, and getting that from your book. So that it's, as I was reading it, I loved seeing those pages and loved getting those reaction panels, because for me, that's the stuff that, especially when it's used for humor, to either break up a very serious scene or anything like that, that it's hard to get that kind of visual gag humor into comics, and to see it deployed in that way is something that I always love to see. So again, it makes sense as I connect that dots back to what you say about those roots of you starting in animation and storyboarding and thinking of story that way, of not just A to B to C to D, but I guess in your mind also thinking about where the rests are, where the breaks are, what the pacing is of the story, not just getting to the end.
Yeah, I think my favorite parts of movies, or James Gunn does this really well. Joss Whedon, I know he's kind of in that shaky.
Speaking for the art alone, not the artist.
Yes, exactly right. Miyazaki, they do the quiet moments so well, and just spending a little time with a character, for me as a viewer or a consumer, I'm just like, oh, I just love that. Just like, yeah, give me the action. I love the action. Push that story along. But when you get those tiny little quiet moments, or just the quiet exchange between two characters, it's really nice. So I appreciate that you recognize that.
Yeah, we get that. I think we see, because so many, I think those panels are often close-ups of faces, or people, either in the scene together or speaking to each other. And I think you get that emotion across. I think the way that you draw faces and focus on them. So when you have those quiet beats, those rest beats, I think you feel either the weight of, like a scene where Tegan dies there at the end, and you feel the gravity of that, or you feel maybe the awkwardness or the absurdness of a funny moment sitting in that uncomfortable silence there. Whatever reason you're using that panel, I think that comes across because of that focus on character, and depending on where you are in the book, how far you've been on this journey with them. That the action's going to happen. We know there's going to be some final showdown. Like we know all that's coming down the line, but what we're here for and what we're following along with right now is how these characters are working together. It's not just Vesper and Cork, who we obviously are our main focus, but you have Tegan in there. You have whatever Dom's deal is. Then obviously then Hunter comes in, and you have all these characters come in, and by the end, I think you care about this core group, and you want to see them succeed, not just because they're the heroes, but because you almost feel like they deserve to have this. They deserve to be happy. Someone like Cork deserves to be happy after everything that Vesper's been through. She deserves this at the end, and I think you get that from the story. You deliver all that to the reader, and all the fighting and the shooting and the magic stuff, all that stuff is happens along the way, and it's great to read. But it's those character moments that I think really stand out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, so one question that I think will set up the last section of the interview, do you work analog or digital? I'm guessing digital.
Digital, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I got my Cintiq. It's actually sitting right in front of me. I use Photoshop and my good old Cintiq.
Okay, nice. Yeah. So you don't sell original prints of any art?
I do not. No, and I should.
I don't think it's much of a cash cow as I probably think it is. But I do buy a lot of original art from books that I really enjoy, or artists that I really enjoy. So actually, I had to ask.
Yeah.
So before we get to the very end there, I do want to ask about one thing I know you're working on right now, which is House of Lothar, right? So
Lothar, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the difference with that being on Webtoon versus what you had done with Plume, which is a web comic. For those who are listening who may not be aware, Webtoon and web comics are kind of like squares and rectangles, all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. Webtoon specific is the vertical scrolling comic. So that kind of infinite scroll if you're on your phone or a tablet. Very popular coming out of East Asia, like Korea, Japan, things like that, and gaining huge popularity in the States, to the point where both Marvel and DC on their own services have specific comics drawn and presented in those ways, because they know there's an audience for that. So working on that, which I guess they're called episodes, right? I guess.
Yes.
How is your approach on that? If it is any different in terms of how you approached, even on the web, it was still a page turn. You still thought about it in terms of pages. Do you still think of it that way in terms of how to get from this screen to the next screen? Are you thinking about those transitions, or is it more similar than it is different than how you were working previously?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, going to Webtoons, it felt like I was a complete noob all of a sudden, because I was like, oh, I'll do my next series, because my previous series, for goodness sake, was all print. And so I was like, okay, let's return to my roots. Let's go back to webcomics. And I was like, okay, well, Webtoons is extremely popular. I've got, there's a huge audience on there.
Massive audience, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll just, poke around the canvas side. And yeah, no, it was like completely relearning everything because of the scroll aspect. However, I do, the whole goal for me with Lothar was like, okay, I want this printed. So I can't format it in a scroll format. So I do format it as a page,
Okay.
so it's a normal comic. I just break it up for Webtoons. So I just kind of, I don't do any of the fancy scrolling. Like some comics can utilize that great, but I just break up the panels. And so you're just scrolling down and reading the panels.
So are you breaking them? Like if I were to scroll down on Lothar and see like 2 panels side by side, is that the page? So are you breaking panels on a page, or is that just like the first half of the page, bottom half of the page? Is your width that you're working with the width of a comic page?
No, sometimes I'll just stretch out a whole panel across. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of what moment I want to punctuate. So, so yes and no. Sometimes it's the small panels, but for the most part, I'm stretching out the panel.
But you said you do want it to be printed.
Oh yeah. Actually, it's at the printer now. So volume 1, 200 pages, hardcover is coming hopefully very soon. Not enough. It won't be here before Cincy Expo, but.
Well, that's excellent, because the next question here, is there anything coming up that you'd like to promote? There we go. So House of Lothar coming out there. Okay, so in your mind, there isn't a major difference in terms of how you're approaching your story. Is each episode you consider in your mind like one issue?
So each episode is half an issue. So so there'll be 11 chapters in volume 1, but there's actually 22 episodes.
22 episodes.
Online.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Cool. Well, we will look forward to that. Definitely. So you don't have a release date for that quite yet, or when it's going to be ready?
So it's at the printer. It's in their hands. It could be another month, another 2 months. I don't know. With the printing world right now, it's kind of,
That's true. Yeah. So as you're listening to this right now, which will actually,
early October.
Yes. So we are speaking before the Cincinnati Comic Expo, but you are listening to this in the future after the Cincinnati Comic Expo. Perhaps maybe you have seen Lynn, New York Comic Con is coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe probably too soon for that. And then are there any more cons in the calendar year?
Yeah, I have Grand Rapids in November. Mm-hmm.
So potentially maybe House of Lothar, maybe they're in Grand Rapids.
Yes.
All right.
High potential, yes.
All right.
If not, it may be shipping as a Christmas present.
Yes. Yes.
I'll run with that.
Definitely keep an eye out looking for that. Because I've tried Webtoon. I'm not I don't think against Webtoon, but the scrolling thing is not. I personally have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
But if you tell me it's in print, I will 1,000% read it in print. There's no
question
same. About that. Yeah,
I'm kind of the same way. I think that Alex and I are probably showing our age a little bit. There's like I read Solo Leveling, which is a web scrolling manga, but I have the print version. And someone told me that that's like a lesser way to read it, and I'm like, here's the thing, I don't care. Like it's nice on my shelf. It's full color, which is very rare in the world of manga. And I like the way it looks and feels. So I'm going to read it this way.
As of right now, like I love reading print comics digitally. It took me a long time to understand that like scrolling this way is the same as physically turning a page, because I had to get over that part. So if you're telling me I got to get over that to scrolling vertically, listen, I may be old man yelling at cloud on that, but
I agree with you 100%, because joining Webtoons, I said I was a noob, but like I also felt like that Steve Buscemi meme where it's like, hello, fellow kids. Like I was like, I don't know, why are the kids into this now? Like, so yes, I totally understand.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, we can be old, or at least not young, together here. Yes. when House of Lothar comes out in print, and we can read it that way. I can't wait.
Yes, so. Absolutely.
Great.
Awesome. And it sounds like you're nowhere near printing for your novelization of Plume.
Yeah.
No.
That's in progress.
That's in progress. Yes. Yeah. I'm only 50 pages in. So yeah, give me some time on that.
Okay. Fair enough. We'll just keep our eyes.
50 pages in. Has Vesper even left her aunt's house yet at that point?
Literally, Magnus just showed up to like take her out to the west. So
there we go. Okay.
I love it. That sounds like it might stretch more than one book.
Oh yeah. Okay.
No,
I planned some big stuff for the novelization.
If you're going to be sprinkling in more story beats, then 50 pages in and the story, quote unquote, hasn't even started yet, then
no,
there's a lot to go.
So 600 years for Korik in the comic is a little longer for him in the novel. I made him a little older. Older.
Okay.
That's an exaggeration. So he's got a lot of history to go through.
Excellent.
Yeah. And for the record, if the novel goes well and you keep writing it, I would love to see, kind of the goofy adventures, like the car trip, with them both in incorporeal form. But I also love the idea of the hunter, the black character, giving the protector to his children and his children's children while growing up in America. And I'm like, oh man, there's a lot of rich storytelling to be had there.
I think that's one of the things we talked about in terms of characters that, not that Hunter didn't get a fair shake in the story. I think we understand him very well, but so many more questions jump ahead when presumably we are in present day, when his great grandson, is it one great?
Two. I don't even remember.
Maybe great, whatever.
Two, I think.
Whatever generation it was. When we see him, when we see him get the book, and get the totem, the ring there. There are 1,000 questions jump up and be like, oh wait, if they've been in the United States of America this whole time, Korik and Vesper would have been pretty damn busy. And what does that do to you growing up with these people, with these protectors? So that'd be fantastic if there's more story about what happens kind of after the end of Vesper and Korik's narrative. That'd be great as well.
Okay, all right, good to know. Yeah.
And if it's a novel, I can get my wife to read it. If it's a graphic novel, not as much.
Yeah, no, I do plan to do like the little illustrations for like the chapter titles, but beyond it'll be a full-on novel.
Excellent.
Love it.
Excellent.
Well, aside from buying and reading your comics, how else can people support your work? I already mentioned private commissions. Are those at cons only, or can people email and get those by mail?
My website has some different sizes and variations of commissions, so you can go right through there. And I have a Patreon as well, so you can join that. And then just a simple like or tweet on all social medias. That helps out tremendously.
Yeah. So you are on Instagram and whatever Twitter is going by these days.
Yes. Yeah. Formerly known as Twitter. Yeah.
Still calling it Twitter. You know what? Hell with it.
Well,
Still Twitter.
I'll retweet that. And then do you have like Blue Sky, Threads, any of the new stuff, or just going to stay with Instagram as
I'm still peeking in the window of Blue Sky, waiting for my verification.
We got an invite for you.
Really?
Oh yeah. It's yours.
Oh, okay. So yes,
by the time this podcast comes out, she'll have been blue skying for a month.
I'll be in the blue sky, soaring high. Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
I'd say, weirdly, Blue Sky became the place I think comics Twitter migrated to.
Yeah.
Of all the places, I don't know how that or why it went that way, but the majority of comics people I used to follow, both creators and media, all kind of decided that Blue Sky was the place. So
good, because formerly known as Twitter is a dumpster fire now.
It's bad. Just you think it can't get any worse, it somehow does.
Yeah, right.
You know what? There is no nadir. There is no bottom right now. Twitter,
but if you want to watch the best commentary on it as it burns, follow Mark Russell on Twitter, the comic writer. He just, I don't know how he writes so many comics when he spends all of his time trolling like hate groups and conservatives on Twitter, but it is so entertaining. If he published a book of his tweets, I would buy that and read it.
Oh gosh. I'll have to check that out.
And if anyone is listening at this point, you're a super fan, you love Plume, you love Kaylin Smith. I have the first trade as an extra copy that I intend to get signed at the Cincinnati Comic Expo. And if you share this tweet, Instagram post, whatever, put it in your story, I'll enter you in a raffle and give away a signed copy of Volume 1.
Nice.
So,
can I throw in Volume 2 for that?
You can, yeah. I'm not giving up my omnibus.
No. We'll do volume 1 and 2.
Volume 1 and volume 2. Excellent, excellent. Yeah,
that gets you halfway through what we already spoiled in this podcast. But like good stories, there's no such thing as spoiling it. Like if you hear us talk about it and you hear the plot points, we'll both go back and reread it fully aware of the plot points and enjoy it that much more, because that's what good stories do.
Yeah, I don't know your position on that, Lynn, but like I've come around to the idea that like, spoiler. I know people are some people are super sensitive to spoilers. They don't want to know anything. They don't want to know names of character. They want complete blackout zone. I don't care if the story's good. It gets me more excited to read or watch or experience whatever it is.
Same.
Quote unquote, knowing the ending or knowing what's going to happen for me takes away none of my enjoyment.
Same.
The only time I say no spoilers is jokingly when I go into something like Oppenheimer or Titanic. I'm like, don't tell me about the bomb.
Titanic.
I don't know about the
boy.
I didn't actually see the movie.
Right.
I didn't actually see the movie, but I do remember saying that to people with the Passion of the Christ. I was like, no spoilers. Like, I don't want to know. So anyway, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
for joining us, and for anyone listening, thank you for listening. Give us a share on your social media platform of choice, and you will be entered to win volumes 1 and 2, signed by Galen Smith. So thank you for listening, and have a great one.
Thank you.